Archbishop Alexander agreed to transfer me and to then assign me to start up the mission here in Ames, Iowa.
So, so basically, was Holy Transfiguration, that was your first assignment then?
My first permanent assignment. I had done some supply work as an ordained priest at seminary. That's one of the things that you can do to kind of get some practice. And I actually did have a quasi-permanent, because I was at the same church for same parish for probably 4 months, 5 months. And that was St. John the Baptist in Edwardsville, Pennsylvania. I was there for a little bit, and even to the point of working with the council and going to parish council meetings and stuff like that. So really getting more involved with not just coming and serving services, but what is it like to be in the administration of a church as well as the liturgical life.
Okay, and which leads to my next question. Talk a little bit about the difference between serving in an established parish and then basically in Ames, you're coming to something it's kind of been there for a while. There's been a community of interested people, but basically when you get there, it's a new thing. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, I mean, when you're at a parish that's been there for, I think at that time they'd been there for like 112 years in Edwardsville. I looked back one time, I had the occasion, I got a phone call and somebody said, I need to find out some baptismal records from back in the 1910 era. And so I pulled the metric book out and it was all in Russian. I could not read a word of it myself. I could detect a few characters and that kind of thing, but couldn't really read any of it myself. And that's when that kind of hit me. Oh yeah, this place is pretty old and it has some tradition to it already established. I'm not sure. I think it was a Greek Catholic church before it joined the Metropolia back in the day. But I think that the biggest thing there was trying to, I mean, when you have an established parish, there's a very real need on the part of the clergy who's assigned there, whether it be as the rector or even just as I was as temporary, to fit yourself into the parish. Whereas in a mission, particularly the mission like we had in Ames, that didn't really have a sponsoring parish. We were not breaking off from another parish to form a mission. And so we had zero tradition. And it was very much a different environment and a different set of challenges, because rather than trying to fit yourself into a parish, you're trying to build a parish around you while you're there. And you're trying to be responsive to a variety of traditions that are coming into and forming this new thing. So we had about, when I first got here, nobody came with the same background.
Two things. What characterized the people who got involved initially? And then, like what needs, like what were they trying to do? What did they think they were trying to do?
Sure.
Okay.
The main drivers from this were, well, even that group was a diverse group. There was 4 or 5 people, which is normally about how it starts. They need probably 15 or so would come, but there were really 4 or 5 people that were driving this thing. And one of them in particular was a convert. It was the friend of mine that I had known when we lived in Ohio, who had moved to Ames. And but then there were others. There was a guy who was Cradle Orthodox, who was from Johnstown, Pennsylvania, grew up in the Carpatho-Russian church there. There was a young woman who married with kids, the whole 9 yards. But and she was from the Antiochian tradition. She was from Wichita, so she had gone to the parish in Wichita, Kansas, and grown up really in the church. And we had others that were converts. And their main motivation was kind of like a lot of things in Orthodoxy. There's two motivations. One is we want to grow the church. The other is I don't want to have to drive the hour to go to church anymore. I'd rather have something in our town. So there's that overall sort of spiritual idea of, yes, we want to grow the kingdom, we want to grow the church, but then there's also the practical aspect of it. We want to not have to drive to church, particularly during an Iowa winter when the snow and the wind and everything else comes into play.
Sure.
So the nearest parish from here was in Des Moines, state capital. It's about 45 minutes south. And the church itself is actually about an hour, 45 minutes to an hour each way. And so that was kind of the motivation that they brought to the table, but they brought to it a zeal for not just we want something familiar, because they knew that they all came from different backgrounds, so they knew they couldn't necessarily have everything familiar like they wanted it. But they did want something. They did want something more convenient, and that was primarily, I think, the motivation. And just to know that there were other Orthodox Christians in their community.
Well, then next question is only slightly tongue in cheek. How did it go when they discovered it wasn't entirely convenient to start a mission?
I'm not sure. I think it's like everybody, when you get involved with missions, you always underestimate the amount of work involved. I don't think they had any illusions that it was going to be easy, but I also think they underestimated how much work was actually going to be involved. But, to their credit, they were up for the task. Mm-hmm. And, part of that was being able to support me and my family to come out here. One of the things that Archbishop Alexander was pretty insistent on was that I have to have some way to live. I have to have some, and I was a CPA, so I felt like I had some marketable skills. But finding a job before I came here was next to impossible. It was hard to find a job with me in Pennsylvania and trying to go halfway across the country. So what we worked out, I felt pretty confident that I could get a good, well-paying job or a job to support my family within 6 months or so. And so we got the support from the local community to give me a stipend for that 6-month period. And sure enough, about 90 days after we moved here, I was employed and have been since that time. So and then the rest of it was where it kind of got interesting, because it was a lot of trying to figure out, the other thing that you don't have when you start from scratch is you don't have any music, and you don't have all the liturgical books. You may or may not have a gospel book. Some of the real basic elements of Orthodox worship were missing. So it was a big scramble for us to try to come up with some of that material. And we were very blessed that there had been a parish in the Romanian diocese in Omaha that had closed several years prior. And they had a lot of the stuff from that parish was sitting in the parish council president's garage, and had been for a long time. And we got in contact with them. I don't know exactly how that worked out, but we ended up making a trip over and got most of our iconography and the candlestick, 7-branch candlestick, and there was a lot of construction involved too. We built a lot of the furniture that we ended up using for the altar, the proscomedia table, all of that kind of stuff. So we were blessed to be able to get that stuff from from the gracious people in that former parish. I think it was Archangel Michael parish in Omaha, and that's about 2 hours west of us. So it was, and they were happy to have it being used again instead of sitting in somebody's garage.
You mentioned you had about 5 households. Maybe a little bit of a thumbnail of where you guys are today in terms of households, and again, the cradle and convert mix, that kind of thing.
Yep.
Your demographics, what does that look like today?
Well, the first thing to say is that we have turned over our parish roughly 3 times already. I've had people who have, the founding families have left, gone other places. Then we've had people come in, they've left and gone other places, and now we're kind of on our 3rd iteration. But during that time, we've seen pretty steady growth. It seems like it's 2-step or maybe 5 steps forward and 4 steps backwards, but it's been pretty steady. So we started out with maybe 5 families involved, 15 to 18 people. And now we have, I was just looking at that the other day, or a minute ago, actually. We have 38 full adult members, 11 children, so 49, almost 50 total. And then we also now, as of today, have 25 inquirers and catechumens. And so we end up with, we've got about 40 different families in total. So, we've got a total of, 50, so 40 families. That tells you that not a lot of singles. We have the families that we do have that have kids are rather large families. They have 4 and 5 kids each, 3, 4, 5 kids. We have young couples. We have everything from college students. We're in a college town, so we have a lot of college students that we don't count as members, but that come to our services regularly. And now we started off with, we had an OCF group that I'm the chaplain for myself, and I split the duties with the Father Basil Hickman, who's the Greek priest in Des Moines. And we started off with 4 or 5 people, and now we're up to about 15 in the OCF group. And so we've got a total of about, like I said, about 40 families, and of that, probably 2/3 are singles who are coming to church on their own. And then the rest would be husband and wife and or kids. And we really have a wide age group now. For the longest time, we didn't have any children to speak of, and now we've got more children than we can shake a stick at, which is a wonderful problem. People ask me about, well, aren't they disruptive during the service? I'm like, yes, and I love it. I do love it. I actually had one of the children. I asked I learned a lesson about giving a rhetorical statement or a rhetorical question during a sermon, because he answered it, and it was a good answer too. So yeah, it's been a joy. It's been a joy to watch it grow. But then I look at the people who have left, and we've got more people who have left than what are here now. We have over 100 people have come and gone, and in that 10-year period that we've been here.
Well, this leads to a few other questions, but parenthetically, because sometimes this will explain growth or lack of growth. Is your parish, is your location an urban location? And then are you more or less close to the campus?
Urban in Iowa means something different than urban in Pennsylvania, say. Yeah. Urban, we are a smallish town. Ames has about, depending on who you talk to and when you do the count, it's got about 35 to 40,000 full-time residents in the city of Ames. And then the university, Iowa State University, is here. We have on campus about 30,000 students. So the total population during school is somewhere around 70,000. And so just to give you an idea of scale. And then we are located actually downtown in Ames. The campus is probably a mile or two west of us. But the good thing about being in a college town like Ames, we have an excellent bus service. The bus lines in Ames run throughout the city. It's sponsored by the university in partnership with the city. And so getting to us downtown is not a problem.
So the area that you draw from is primarily Ames zip codes, let's say.
Well, we have to go pretty well beyond that too. We draw anywhere within 120-mile radius.
Oh my.
We have several that come from Des Moines up, and we have some that come from Marshalltown, which is a city about 45 minutes to the east of us. We have some that come down from Fort Dodge and Webster City, which is about 45 minutes north of us. And then occasionally we have had some members who came from Cedar Falls, Waterloo area, which is a couple hours away. Yeah. So yeah, we draw from a pretty diverse group, and all of them, I would say, have one thing primarily in common, and that is they all desire liturgy in English, the language that they can all understand. That if I'm asked to produce a reason why these people are coming to us, that far and away is the number one answer that we get.
So you've got kind of a built-in wandering in and out factor with the college students.
Yep.
But are you seeing, like so many other priests seem to be seeing, say in the last few years, you just got people who are showing up?
Huge.
Are you doing anything like to reach out? Like, are you doing anything really intentional and social media campaigns and other than a social media presence, or is this just happening?
Yeah. I have to say, by and large, it just happened. And I can't put a pinpoint on anything that we have done as a parish. Now, I would say several years ago, and it has been several years now, we were just trying to figure out how to get our name out there, how to figure out so that people would know we existed.
Sure.
And we, with the death of print media, newspaper ads don't really go anywhere anymore. We felt like cable TV was an option, but it was so hit and miss. There was really no point. We felt like it was money down the drain. So what we did was we actually, I talked about the bus service. We put ads on the buses. They have advertising on the outside of the buses, and it was expensive. It was not cheap, but we had a benefactor who agreed with us that it was a good thing to do. I think it was like $500 and something a month. So it was by and large our largest expense. But we did that for a year, and we had all it was really simple. We had an icon of Christ, Pantocrator, the St. Catherine's icon, and we had our name, parish name, and our location, and that was pretty much it. And we got a lot of feedback that way. Then we did try to do some events. They weren't, I don't think they were terribly successful, but I mean, define success. I don't know what that looks like anyway. But like we started a little food pantry, and that was in cooperation with the local Ames paper and one of the local Ames manufacturers. They gave us the box, basically. They took an old newspaper dispensing box and gave it to us to use as a pantry. So we had a few things like that, but it has been several years since we've done anything significant. And at least until last fall when we did our 10th anniversary. That was a big shindig. We tried to do a little publicity with that, but So I'm just amazed at what God is doing, because like you, I've had discussions with other priests both here and across the country, and seems like there's a ton of interest and a lot of people are being drawn to the Orthodox Church. I had two show up this morning.
Yeah.
That was their first time, and they were both of them were like, "Sign me up. Where do I join?" They were
Yeah.
ready. And
Well,
slow down just a bit.
that's wonderful, Father. And again, it's there's something different about this current time. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not, I came into the Orthodox Church a little before you did. I've been involved in the ordained ministry for, let's see, almost 28 years,
Hmm.
from the time I was a deacon. And you're right, the usual suspects, what used to be the usual suspects, advertising and the newspaper and so forth. I think, and do you have a social media presence of
We
sorts?
do. We
Uh-huh.
do. We're
Yeah,
active on Facebook and on Instagram. We're primarily focused on Instagram, and then as a side, more of a side cross post than anything, to go to Facebook. We
sure.
also live stream our services, which I think helps. We live stream on both YouTube and Facebook. We usually have 5 or 6, 10 people that will watch our live streams.
Hmm. Um, so what resources have you found to be helpful? I mean, let's put it this way. If you could have access to one resource, uh, no strings attached except money, I mean, like if you had the money to do it, let's say, what would that be?
I would have a tough time pinning it down to one thing. I think it's multiple things. One is, I think if I could be full time and be supported by the gifts at the parish full time, I know that I could do more and that
Yeah.
I could have more presence in the community. I could have more opportunities to do um, lectures or workshops, or things that we could invite the community to participate in. I feel like I could do a much better job of that. Um, Taking myself out of the equation, we have a couple of real needs now that we haven't had before, and that relates to the choir. We don't have a choir director per se. My wife fills in as our choir director for most Sundays. Um, and we really have a very thumb sketchy toward a sort of Sunday school program. We don't really have anything. It's all one age group. We don't have enough critical mass to divide up. We got a lot of
Hmm.
kids of a lot of different ages, but we can't really divide them up. So we don't have specialized youth ministries or children's ministries. And I think that would be the choir in that area would be the two that I would really think that's our greatest need.
So what kind of plans do you have? Like this is our next level thing for over the next few years, 2 years or 4 years from now, we want to be at, or we want to accomplish. What do you got in that slot?
I think a lot of it is, for us, it's trying to integrate new people into the
Sounds like.
community,
Sounds like.
you know, um, and it is a wonderful problem to have, but in many respects, it is something that has to be thought about. It has to be carefully considered. I don't want to take people and all of a sudden they express a little bit of interest. So now, well, you can be on the parish council and you can serve in the altar and you can do this and you can do that. And I don't want to busy them to death.
Yeah.
I want them to integrate into the parish and then grow enough spiritually to where they can really start identifying the areas where they are gifted and
Hmm.
that they can help. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of our problems will resolve themselves through that process, or at least that's what I hope.
Hmm.
And my ultimate goal is to establish and have maybe 10 to 15 families that are quasi-permanent residents. Nobody's permanent anymore, but at least they're going to be in a long-term relationship with the community. And that's the core group that I think is necessary for us to be able to build around. And with the idea that when our membership grows to the point that we expect it to or want it to, we have a big space. But right now we divide it into two parts. We have our fellowship area in the back, and we have our worship area in the front. And we've got a basement that is absolutely stripped bare. We had to do a lot of stuff when we got our building to remediate a lot of mold and asbestos. So it's stripped bare and it's ready to be rebuilt. And I think that may be the next big step when we're ready for it, is to rebuild and build out the basement and begin to use it as a fellowship space, and then to have the whole of the nave for worship and for liturgical services.
So this is going to be the last question. What makes your mission, Holy Transfiguration, totally unique in the Orthodox world?
I'm going to say hopefully we're not. I mean, I know what you're getting at. I hear you. I don't want us to be unique. I want there to be a Holy Transfiguration mission in every city. I want, that's my goal, my dream, I guess, is to take this wondrous faith that I found, quite intentionally, but also quite by accident. And I want to see that opportunity and that faith given to the rest of the country. And that's the area where I think the OCA in particular, and also the Bulgarian diocese, have all the tools necessary to do that. And so what makes us unique, I guess, is the fact that we're part of the Bulgarian diocese, and I only have one Bulgarian person there, and he works at the college, and he's been a faithful member of ours since we started. His mom comes from Bulgaria and visits with us for 6 months at a time. It's great, wonderful to have. But we're basically all converts, and so I really feel like our mission is outreach to those who don't know anything about Orthodoxy. And how do we reach the people who now are either the ones that are currently called nuns or unaffiliated or, spiritual but not religious? How do we reintroduce them to what Christianity is really all about?
Father, I think that's a good place to wrap up our discussion. So why don't we close with a little prayer?
Absolutely.
It is truly meet to bless you, O Theotokos, ever blessed, most pure, and the mother of our God. You are more honorable than the cherubim, beyond compare, more glorious than the seraphim. In virginity, you gave birth to God, the Word. True Theotokos, we magnify you. In the name of the Lord, Father, bless.
Christ our God, bless us who strive to do your work in all things.
Amen.
Amen.